a very good morning from Okinawa. This is the Sony A7RV CR5, one of those. I bought this camera primarily as a backup to my main camera that I use all the time, which is the A7RV. And I honestly thought I wouldn't use it that much. It'll just sit in my bag because it's small, and the A7RV is what will be on me most of the time. And then for fun, I would use the Q3 that I no longer have. However, as time went on, not only did I replace my Leica Q3 with this because I prefer it, but I've also found myself using this just as much as the A7RV. And on days like this where we're just going down to the beach, I prefer this. And in this video, I'll share my experience, my opinions, and just my general thoughts of using this camera for about 3-4 months now, and why my opinion on this has changed. It's quite loud here, and it's absolutely stunning as well. As with all my gear videos, time for a quick disclaimer. I paid for this camera with my own money. I have no relationship with Sony, nor do I care about building relationships with camera brands. Therefore, everything I'm sharing is 100% my own opinion without any influences. Furthermore, the opinions I share are based on real life use and just living with this camera. This isn't a technical review. I will not be looking at graphs and brick walls at 1000%. It's just what this camera is like on a day like this, when you're going down the beach, you're doing stuff, you're out taking photos, videos. What is it like to live with? So let's start with the positives, and by far one of the biggest ones is the size and the weight of this camera. It is incredibly small and light, and not just small and light for a full frame camera, but for a camera in general. When I used to use the Fujis, the X-T5, the X-H2, I'll be honest, unless you use them with like the little primes, they were bigger and heavier than this. And if you use this 40mm f2.5, then you end up with a system that is so small, and it's great for travel. It's great for daily carry as well. Now, there is a price to pay for all of this, and that's if you fit a bigger lens, like a 24-70, 70-200, or even the fast primes, not the f1.4s, it becomes very front heavy. Now, you do have a great grip on this. One of the biggest annoyances that I have with small cameras like the Q3 is the fact that there's no grip, so it feels like a bar of soap in your hand. This has a proper grip, and when you buy this camera, it comes with a little extension thing that goes on the bottom to make it even bigger. That is definitely more comfortable to use, but even then, if you're using it with a bigger lens, it's not impossible, it's easily doable, but you do feel a bit more of that front heaviness. With that said, small primes, or even at the 24-50 f2.8 zoom, and this is a great little travel package. I would add one thing though, actually, and that is this little thumb grip from Small Rig. This is really, really good. It makes this camera a lot more comfortable to hold. You put your thumb on there, but also it acts as a weather sealing cover for the hot shoe, because even though Sony's are weather sealed, the hot shoes can be an area of issue, because when they get wet, the camera thinks an accessory is being attached and it just goes a bit weird. This actually has a seal on it, so you still get a cold shoe to mount an accessory puddle. But yeah, this is a great accessory that I would recommend. My second favorite thing about this camera is the sensor. We'll start with the photography side of it, and the resolution is insane. It basically means that this 40mm lens can be cropped using the APS-C mode to a 60mm, and you still have 26 megapixels to play with. You can then crop even further, and oh my god, the size of a butterfly, Jesus Christ. So anyway, so you can crop in quite a lot. Now, high resolution sensors, you don't really need them for photography, but if you're going to be printing like huge billboards, again, they're not strictly necessary, but for cropping, I think they are really helpful, because it means that one prime can give you loads of opportunities and loads of ways to even pull a vertical frame out of a landscape shot, which is something I've done quite a lot. I know some people are not fans of cropping. I personally don't see any problems with it, and being able to take a landscape photo and pull 2 or 3 different compositions out of it, in my opinion, is a very powerful tool to have at your disposal. Moving on to dynamic range, there's so much of it that honestly, unless you're completely screwing up the exposure or you're taking a photo of something that is clearly blown out, you're not going to run into any issues. So many times I would see a blown out sky in the raw file. Every single detail is there. So dynamic range is very good. And the last thing is color. Honestly, I think the colors out of the sensor are very good. Now, there are differences between Sony sensors. Some are better than others. I know Sony has a reputation for bad colors. Now, straight out of camera, is this as nice as a Fujifilm or a Leica or a Hasselblad? The answer is no. Some cameras are better straight out as JPEGs. This isn't one of them. However, there is so much latitude for editing and the colors are not difficult to edit that it won't take you very long to figure out how to edit these colors and get the most out of them. I'm now nearly 1 year in using the Sony, and many of my photos now are looking very similar to what my Fuji files used to look like, because that's my particular style. So yeah, the colors are really good out of this camera. Hello from tomorrow. I forgot to add this bit yesterday. Everything I've talked about, the photo quality, also applies to video. So much dynamic range. The colors are amazing, just everything is really, really good. The files, especially in S-Log3, are wonderful to edit. Obviously, if you have a lot of fast-moving subjects, you can get a bit of skewing because obviously it's a high-resolution sensor and it's not the fastest sensor in the world. So, but even then, you really need to be shooting something that's moving very fast and very vertical by design to kind of see that, or you need to violently shake the camera. But either way, the video quality is excellent. The next thing that I really like about this camera is the stabilization. Now, it's not as good as the A7RV, however, it is still incredible. Now, for photography, I think almost every camera has good IBIS these days, but for video, that's where the software can come in and make it either much better or worse. So when I used to use the Fujifilm IBIS, it was great for photography, but for video, it was a bit not there. With the Sony, at least in my opinion, it is incredible for video because you have a digital aspect to it that it does crop in a little bit. However, it means you can get tripod steady shots just by holding the camera. And when you're walking and you're using the most kind of advanced digital stabilization mode, you can get an almost gimbal-like shot as long as you're careful and you're walking carefully, etc. The next feature that I absolutely love about this camera is the APS-C mode. So obviously, being a full frame camera, you can assign a custom button to switch into APS-C mode and use just a middle part of the sensor, which will equate to a 1.5 times APS-C crop. There are a few pros and cons to this. The first kind of pro, in my opinion, is you can extend the focal range of a lens, so to speak, or crop in camera. So this 40mm prime can become a 60mm prime when I press a button, and it's instant. So it's very easy to use one prime and just have two different focal lengths, so to speak. The other advantage is that you can use APS-C lenses, native APS-C lenses on this camera. So if you want a very compact setup, and more compact than a full frame camera can deliver, or full frame lens, sorry, you can use an APS-C lens on this. Now, the price you pay is, there is a tiny loss of dynamic range, but this is not something I've proven myself. It's just what others have said. I personally can't see any difference, but it is what it is. And the other issue is, well, say it's not an issue, but you lose 60 megapixels. Obviously, you now have only 26, which is still a lot of resolution, and the file size will become smaller as well. I personally use APS-C mode all the time on this camera, as well as the bigger A7RV, because it extends, the range. Some people would ask, well, why not just crop in editing, therefore retain all that information? And the short answer to that is, sometimes I know 100% that I need to crop. So for example, behind me is like a little mountain here. I know that if I want to get closer, I need to crop, and I will not uncrop that. So why have all that extra resolution and file size if I don't need it? I really like how the top dial is implemented. You have a switch for photo video that you can do with one finger. You have the top dial where you have 3 custom modes. They're different for photo and video, and you have the traditional shutter aperture priority. And the thing that I like the most about it is I can adjust it with one finger without needing two hands on the camera. The way it's laid out, I can switch the camera on, I can change from photo to video, and I can change the mode by using one hand, which is incredibly useful. You don't realize how useful it is until you've used a camera where you need two hands to either switch it on or to carry out an important task. So even though it's boring, definitely boring compared to like a Fuji with the top dials, it's efficient and it gets the job done. To add to the previous point, this camera is incredibly customizable. Well, not just this one, all Sonys are, but there'll be a separate video about it. Let me just give you one example. You can assign a custom button that when you press and hold it, it changes the entire operation of the camera, from the focus mode, from the, let's say, aperture or shutter priority, exposure, everything. So you could be shooting in one mode, let's say aperture priority, then you need a shutter drag with, I don't know, highlight metering, press and hold it, you're in that mode, take a photo, let go, back in aperture priority. The next thing that I like is just how fast this camera is. By that I mean little things like switching it on, changing menus, scrolling through the menus, and general interaction with this camera. I've owned cameras like the Hasselblad and the Leica where you can spend up to 5 seconds waiting for it to switch on from the moment you physically switched the camera on. And to you, it might not sound like a big deal, but when you're about to take the shot and the camera is, oh sorry, sweat's going in my eyes, and the camera switched off, and then you switch it on and you're waiting, and then you have to wait for the focus to engage, and it's just, the whole process takes 5 seconds, you've missed the shot. You could just leave the camera on, I understand, but it's not the point. When you have a camera that switches on instantly and it's ready to go, it makes a huge quality of life improvement. Now this positive comes as no surprise, everyone is aware of it. The autofocus on this camera is absolutely insane. This has got the AI chip that can detect your sandwich from 10 miles away if you so wish. Jokes aside, it's really, really good. It's, you know, you don't have to think about focusing, you just point, shoot, and that's it. To some people that's boring, some people want more of a challenge, but if you want the camera to get out your way, this is probably the closest that you will get. Now there are other features with the focusing system that are worth mentioning. The first one being the focus and recompose, whereas typically you'd lock the camera, then recompose. Instead of locking it, you just press this button and it locks digitally on that subject, but it keeps tracking it. So as you move the camera around the scene, the camera stays focused on that subject and it tracks it. So even if the subject is moving while you're recomposing or even changing orientation, it keeps it tracked. There are a bunch of other small autofocus life improvements. They will be covered in a separate video or in a detailed blog. But in short, it's the best autofocus I've ever used. You definitely don't need anything more than this. And the last positive is one that I've only learned since replacing my Leica Q3 and Hasselblad and even X100 with this. And that is, this camera looks boring and it looks plain and no one pays attention to it. When they used to use the Hasselblad, the Leica, or even the silver X100, those cameras attract attention. People want to ask you questions about them. I've had so many comments saying, oh, I love your Leica, or I love this Hasselblad, whatever. This doesn't get that. It just looks like a generic camera that you'd buy from a shelf in Argos. Argos is a British shop for those who are not from the UK. But it's boring. For me, that's great because it means no one's looking at it. It can just blend in and it works. So I know for some people, it means this camera is a bit boring because I want something that's more exclusive looking, which I totally get, but I would rather stick with boring. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut the video here because I think my bus is coming and we definitely can't miss it because, well, we won't have another one for the rest of the day. So the video will have to carry on another time. Good morning from Takitomi Island. We've jumped on a 15-minute boat from Ishigaki where we were yesterday to have a look. Seems all right, but anyway, back to the video. So Now let's talk about some things that I don't like about this camera, and there are quite a few. The first thing that I really don't like, and to be honest, it's the biggest negative about this camera for me, is the shutter, specifically the shutter sound. I'm not sure why it sounds like that, but it's very loud, and it also sounds a little bit hollow. I mean, if I didn't know any different, I'd think it's broken, but I don't know why it's that loud. It's just not a very pleasant sounding shutter. On the A7RV, it sounds a lot better. I don't know. Also, the shutter only goes up to 1/4000th of a second, which is quite a bit lower than the 1/8000th of a second that you get on the A7RV and the bigger cameras. From my research and understanding, it's because it's a cheaper mechanism for cost saving. I don't know. I just think when you spent this much money on a camera, it would be nice if it sounded the same as its bigger brother. This leads into another issue, which is rolling shutter. Because it's quite a slow sensor, if you're going to be shooting in electronic or silent shutter mode, which you probably would do in many scenarios with this camera because it's loud, you get a lot of distortion, you get a lot of warping, and unless you're very still or your subject is reasonably still, expect to see a degree of skewing. Again, it's not a huge problem, but it's something to keep in mind if you need to use a silent shutter, or if you need a shutter speed that's higher than 1/4000th. Now, in practice, I haven't needed that much, but that's also because I don't typically shoot indoors or in quiet areas. So if you do, it's something that's worth keeping in mind. The next thing I don't like about this camera is the screen design, but it's only because I'm comparing it to the new screen design on the A7RV, which can both articulate and tilt. This one only swings out to the side, which means if you're composing, then you're never quite looking right in the middle of the screen, plus it sticks out and it's a bit more of a faff. Personally, I just leave it in the camera as if it was a fixed unit, and I only ever pull it out if I really need to change the angle. If you've never used like an articulating screen, or if this is what you're used to, you're not going to have any issues, and this isn't even a negative. But if you're used to the new design screens, then it's something that will maybe annoy you a little bit. It doesn't annoy me that much because I just leave it inside in the camera, but it's something to keep in mind. Whilst I was praising the controls of the camera earlier, there is one big negative, and that is the lack of a joystick. Again, for some people this isn't an issue, but if you're used to using a joystick with a camera, then it might be a little bit annoying. There are definitely ways around it. You can use the screen as a touchpad when using the viewfinder. It's not ideal, but it works surprisingly well. You can also focus and recompose. Again, it's not gonna excessively limit how you can use this camera, but if you're just used to a joystick, you might find it a little bit annoying. I reckon they could have squeezed one in, but maybe we'll see it in the next one. Sticking with the controls, the position of the C1 button, in my opinion, could be a little bit better. It can be a bit difficult to reach at times. Again, not the biggest issue. You can program it to do a non-critical task, but I don't know, maybe if it was a little bit more raised or something to make it easier to reach with your thumb. Yeah, small complaint. Now let's talk about the EVF. It's definitely a smaller unit compared to the bigger cameras. The resolution is lower as well, but it's a trade-off I'm happy to make considering how small the camera is. What is annoying is the diopter adjuster keeps changing when the camera's in my bag or if I'm having it around the side. A few times I would go to shoot and everything is blurry, or the opposite of blurry. I mean, I don't know, my vision's fine, but if you need glasses, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I don't know why. I don't know why they couldn't have just like made it a click or done something, but it's very easy to catch it, especially if it's hanging kind of by the side of you. Yeah, I know it's a luxury first world problem in a world with so much going on. a random bloke moaning about his diopter adjuster on the camera is a bit silly, but again, it's something that I've noticed. Moving on to memory cards, there is only one SD card slot. I don't know, I just think it would have been nice to have a couple SD cards, certainly not the CF Express that you get in the bigger cameras, but some people can use this camera for professional work. It would be nice to have a backup. For what this camera is intended, I can see why they didn't do it. Maybe packaging as well is an issue. But one thing that is worth noting is you need to use a specific type of SD card to unlock all the video features. So it has to be a V90 card in order to be able to shoot in the highest resolution possible. Something to keep in mind, and it did catch me off guard when I bought a V60 card and I couldn't use certain features. So who is this camera for? I would say, first of all, if you're buying this, it's primarily for the resolution, because you need to crop a lot, or perhaps you need to shoot and print like 10 meters by 10 meters photos. But for the most people, it's the cropping ability. If you don't care about that, then I would actually say go for the A7C2, which is exactly the same camera, but with a slightly lower resolution sensor. That will also be better for video and for rolling shutter. This is also a great camera for people who already invested in the Sony system and just want a small camera they can throw around their shoulder for days like this, when you're just walking around a beach or whatever, without having to go into multiple different systems. It's actually one of the reasons why I got rid of the Leica and the other brands, because I wanted to have a similar type of camera but within the same ecosystem. So now you're sharing batteries, sharing settings, etc. It makes life a lot easier. And finally, I would recommend this camera to anyone who is entering the Sony ecosystem and who's going to be doing this as a hobby. It's probably one of the best hobby cameras that Sony makes, which still has a lot of the features that make it great for more professional use. So let's sum up the video. Do I recommend this camera? The short answer is yes. Whilst there are a few negatives, I think on the whole the positives and the overall experience of using this camera and the results that you get far outweigh those negatives. Hopefully in the version 2 they will be ironed out. So yeah, I do recommend it. It's not going to be for everyone. There'll be people who would not enjoy the process of using it. There'll be people who would want better colors straight out of camera. But there are hundreds of different cameras out there for this reason. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you do have any questions, please leave them down below. Yeah, and that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
At this point, I want to quickly thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I've been a paying customer way before they supported the channel and have now been using their services for over 5 years. Squarespace is at the center of my online presence, and it's what drives my blog, portfolio, store, and newsletter. I appreciate the simplicity of managing everything from a single app because it saves me time and gives me peace of mind knowing that I can make changes or deal with issues from my phone. If you have a business, a side hustle, or simply want your own little corner of the internet to host your photography or build something big, Squarespace offers all the tools you need across all devices. If you want to learn more, get a free trial and then 10% off your first purchase, use the link in the description or enter code RomanFox at checkout. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring, and thank you for watching.